Welcome to another edition of Geopolitics and Empire. If you're listening to the audio on Apple, Spotify, or another podcast player, you may have noticed ads. Yes, I have switched podcast hosts, and now I have ads inserted. Please bear with me. The podcast has been trudging along financially, economically speaking, and it's not fully sustainable the way things are going, and inserting these ads now is going to generate me a considerable sum of revenue. So please bear with me. Don't complain. If it's too much for you, stop listening. But a lot of the podcasts that I enjoy, Art of Manliness or whatever, they've got ads. I power through them because I know that that's the only way that they can bring these podcasts to the table. We can't do this for free. It takes a lot of work and time. So just giving people a heads up who listen to the audio only version of Geopolitics and Empire on any of the podcast players, you'll be hearing ads now, and that will be generating that in combination with my other sources of revenue, Substack and whatnot, will hopefully give me a full-time salary for the first time doing Geopolitics and Empire. So please learn to live with the ads. All right. Joining us, coming back to the podcast, has been a while, is John Klyczek of schoolworldorder.info. He's the author of the great book. We talked about that in the past, School World Order, The Technocratic Globalization of Corporatized Education. He contributes to a number of publications, including Activist Post, New Politics, Op-Ed News, and Whitney Webb's Unlimited Hangout. Welcome back, John.
Hey, thanks for having me. Always good.
It's been a while. How's it going? You're out there in Ground Zero, Chicago, with all of the ICE raids.
Yeah, it's I'm not in the belly of the beast, so to speak. I've heard helicopters go over numerous times. I actually heard essentially fighter jets. The only time I've heard something like that was when they had the air show when we used to live closer to we used to live on Lakeshore Drive. So it's not like right in the middle of it, but if you look at WGN, it's not too far. It's not too far from here, and but we're okay for now. Yeah.
You're not Mexican, so you're okay. Well, so your latest piece for Whitney Webb, it was published while I was AWOL, missing in action, over the summer, but it's titled From Project 2025 to the PayPal Presidency, School Choice Fintech for a Blockchain Social Credit Economy. In the summary, I'll read it off. The ambitions of the coach-backed network behind Project 2025 and the PayPal mafia. Whitney, there's a grammatical error right there. But the PayPal mafia behind President Trump are set to converge in a public-private fintech industry that distributes school choice subsidies using digital wallets and stablecoins based on AI social credit analytics. That sounds insane. People know that's my favorite topic, the algorithm ghetto, because I think it's our biggest threat. So what's going on here, John?
Well, so it's basically this piece is expanding on the one that we talked about last time I was here. I think it was March or February-ish or something like that. So the first piece that we talked about, I was looking at how the Trump administration was following through with all the school choice provisions that were laid out in Project 2025. And we looked at sort of the network of state policy network think tanks, which are basically Koch brothers, neoconservative, beltway libertarian think tanks that have largely been sort of behind the Republican establishment for quite some time. So these include like American Enterprise Institute, American Legislative Exchange Council, Cato Institute, EdChoice, Heritage Foundation. And in looking at that piece, what I kind of stumbled onto was that several of the authors and the think tanks that they are affiliated with, which I just listed, are promoting or calling for the use of digital wallets to distribute the school choice funds. And so school choice funds, for those that aren't familiar, if you didn't watch that previous episode, they're basically These are schemes for funneling public tax dollars into private institutions, whether they be religious schools or parochial private schools, but it could also be into education technology companies. So funneling, basically subsidizing private ed tech corporations with tax dollars in the way that they want to distribute these public school choice funds, which fall under the umbrella of what are known as sometimes vouchers, but the new ones, we might call them neo vouchers. These include education savings accounts. Sometimes they call them scholarships, tax credited scholarships. But they're all basically, you can just refer to them as neo vouchers for shorthand here. And the digital wallets industry, what I saw there was sort of that that was being also funded by the PayPal mafia network behind the Trump administration as well. And so when I saw the rise of the Genius Act and the executive order, I believe it's 14178 that was issued by Trump and is overseen by David Sachs, PayPal mafia guy, who's the Trump's AI and crypto czar, that basically what we're seeing is that the use of the digital wallets in the school choice industry is just going to be one part of this emerging fintech economy in which digital wallets are going to be used to distribute public funds. But the medium of distributing those through the wallets is going to be stablecoin cryptocurrencies, which means these can be programmed, tracked, and traced. And in doing so, you can basically, with AI, you can data mine the feedback loops between the fintech inputs and the edtech learning outcomes. And then from those feedback loops, you can get predictive analytics that you can use to funnel the students into predetermined career pathways and for lifelong learning, et cetera. So basically what this piece is looking at altogether is sort of the convergence of sort of the old school Koch brothers, state policy network, neocon, beltway libertarian arm of the Republican Party, converging with the futurist kind of Silicon Valley tech bro arm of the Republican Party and the PayPal mafia, and those things converging through basically public-private school choice partnerships, stakeholder capitalism for schools, and the digital wallet industry and the emerging fintech stablecoin economy.
Just to zoom out for a second, I know your focus is education, but would you say, so what you just described, what's going on in education, would you say in every other industry this type of thing is going to, because we see them, they're trying to roll this out I mean, we'll get to that later globally, but nationwide, for all functions of life. You're looking at education, but would you sort of say what you're seeing in education is that's how the rest of the system is going to operate as well through, you know, we're all, they're trying to get us all to have digital wallets with stable coins?
Yeah. So, I mean, I looked at it, you know, the piece sort of makes the case as such. So good examples would be if you look at a company like Class Wallet, which is one of these digital wallet companies funded by a subsidiary of Lazard Inc., which is a partner with the World Economic Forum. But it basically got its start focusing on distributing education funds. One of the big windfalls that it got early on was to distribute emergency funds during lockdowns. But you see that if you go on their website, you'll see that they are branching out to serve, to distribute emergency relief funds through FEMA, housing and urban development, HUD housing vouchers, basically. And then, you know, like health block grants through HHS and other kind of like, you know, health funds, you know. So basically what you're seeing is, and then another company, was sort of the inverse example, would be like Benefit Wallet. Benefit Wallet started out, it used to be a subsidiary of Xerox, and then now it's a subsidiary of Health Equity Inc. And largely what it got its start in as far as its digital wallet services was for health savings accounts. And then later it branched out into school choice funds. So what you see is that in both of these companies, you see it's, you know, they might start focused on one particular area of the economy, but they're all, well, several of them are branching out. And what we see is basically the emergence of this digital wallet industry that's going to be the middleman between government funds and private services. But another example that I can sort of touch on as far as, you know, outside of the education sphere would be healthcare. And I actually have written, wrote a piece. I can't remember the title. It was a while back. The only people that would publish it was Natural News. Was this before Trump? I believe this was before Trump got in, but it was about the Precision Medicine Initiative. I wrote 2 pieces on it, and one of them was looking at sort of the transhuman aspects of the Precision Medicine Initiative. And for those who don't know, the Precision Medicine Initiative, it focuses on personalized healthcare. And what that means is healthcare that is designed specifically based on an individual's genetic signature, their DNA, and then using AI to extrapolate the DNA analytics and the correlations for whatever therapy you might provide. Well, there was a character, part of that project was called All of Us. And it was a study that was headed up by a guy by the name of Eric Dishman. And Eric Dishman got his start making basically smart homes for people with Alzheimer's and maybe I think also like veterans, right? So it had like all these sensors in the house that would help the like Alzheimer's patients like not forget their medication, make sure they don't leave the stove on to, and things like that. But this All of Us project, what he wanted to do was he wanted to put wearables on people and essentially data mine their daily behaviors, their habits, their diet, their environment, their exercise. And it's sort of an epigenetic project where they wanted to draw AI data correlations between your particular genetic signature and your lifestyle habits in order to, right? Because, if you look at something like gene-based pathologies, right? It's not causative in a one-to-one sense of the word, right? So like is it the BCR, the breast cancer gene? Okay. If you have the breast cancer gene, it's not causative that you will get this, right? You will have cancer. It means that you are susceptible to having that cancer. And so what they wanted to look at was, right, like what triggers the expression of particular genes based on your lifestyle habits. Right. And so I had speculated early on that when during the Maha Bobby Kennedy, the new healthcare movement, I had kind of surmised that I think he might actually call for us to do the Dishman project and put the wearables on. I mean, and so he's basically said he wants everybody to have wearables on, and I feel that the scheme is going to be similar to that in education, right? So you can earn health tokens, right, based on the feedback loops between your Fitbit wearables, all those devices that we've talked about in Edtech that data mine heart rate and brain waves and galvanic skin. You can infer learning algorithms from that, but you can infer health algorithms from it as well. And so in the same way that, in education, a student might can earn school choice tokens based on how well they perform on their Edtech modules, subsidized by impact investing. In the healthcare industry, I believe it'll be the same thing. First, it'll be incentivized. Like we'll give you kind of like the, you remember they had I think they still have them, the car insurance companies we're talking about. The car insurance companies only penalize you when you do bad stuff, but wouldn't you like to earn points for driving well, right? So you could get on this like good driving insurance plan, and basically it would keep track of all your driving metrics. Now, if you have one of these newer cars that I drive whenever I have to rent a car to do some traveling, right? It's got, it tells you if you're going too fast. It buzzes if you accidentally touch the lines, right? So it's got all of these analytics in it, and you can, right? You don't have to sign up for that, but you can earn, right, a lower rates on your insurance if you behave well in your vehicle. It'll be the same thing with medicine, right? So if you exercise enough and you eat the right foods, right, we'll give you more health tokens, for your Medicaid or however they want to make that scheme. And so that's, we can envision something similar for housing and emergency relief and all this. And yes, this is going to be essentially the new ecosystem for the sort of social credit, fintech, blockchain economy.
I'm trying to visualize it, and it seems like it's going to be patchworked together. So as you're talking about education, you gave health as an example, cars, the banks are doing similar such stuff. Any shops that you go to want you to sign up to their rewards stuff, right? And so then they can get those analytics, and that goes to some cloud database, probably linked with these other ones where they share all of your info, and it goes to like a global social credit score. And there was a great Bruce something was his name on X, and he did a great rundown of digital ID, right, in the UK now. And my conclusion from his analysis was that it's a bit of a red herring, because he's saying that we're already swimming up to our necks in it. So already these, what you just described, all of these things are already operational, sort of behind the scenes. So it's kind of like this Starmer, all this talk of digital ID. It's a moot point. It's like we're already swimming neck deep into it. And it's kind of what you're describing, these patchwork systems. And the key is, through Palantir and these other few remaining companies, and you talk about some of the PayPal mafia, bringing all of this together into sort of an interoperable system nationally and globally. And I'm just going to share my screen real quick to your article. There it is. And maybe get your thoughts on some of the main movers and shakers. And I wanted to read this because it's really good. It says, the corporatization and digitization of public education are problematic enough, but the fintech privatization of school choice subsidies through digital wallets is ultimately a stepping stone toward the public-private federalization of blockchain, distributed ledger technologies that transfer, track, and trace all government funds through programmable crypto, such as stablecoins, which have their value anchored in the dollar, pledging to crown America as the world capital of crypto and AI. All of that is going on now with the strategic Bitcoin reserve. Then you've got the PayPal mafia, right? Trump, Musk, Thiel, Sachs, and Andreessen, right? You were just telling me last night, Palmer Luckey was on Joe Rogan. And so what do you think of these key players? What do they really represent? Because I think it's usually their interests, not ours, right?
Yeah. Well, so as far as the digital wallet industry goes, we can a good sort of case study would be two companies, one called Odyssey and the other one called Merit International, to illustrate how PayPal mafia portfolios are all entangled with these companies. So Odyssey is funded by three noteworthy venture capital firms. One is Bleen Capital, one is Andreessen Horowitz, right? That's Mark Andreessen's venture capital firm, and then there's Tusk Venture Partners. Now, Bleen Capital is finances Palantir, that's Peter Thiel's AI company. And then both Tusk Venture Partners and Andreessen Horowitz, they both share common investments with Thiel's Founders Fund. Now, Andreessen Horowitz also funds Merit International, and Merit International is also funded by Alumni Ventures, which also has common investments with Peter Thiel's Founders Fund. And so you can see here that the PayPal mafia, sort of venture capital, tech bro people they're propping up this industry. But they are also invested in the Edtech end of the spectrum, right? So they're invested in the digital wallet fintech and they're also invested in the Edtech. So a couple examples would be like Peter Thiel's, he's invested in a couple adaptive learning courseware companies. So one is Newton, the other one is Clever. These are it's basically the digital version of B.F. Skinner's teaching machine. We've broken that down. I've talked about it several times on this show. So people, if you want to know more about that, you can go back to those episodes. Another adaptive learning courseware company called Simbo Lab has been acquired by Course Hero. Course Hero being funded by David Sachs's Craft Ventures. And then you have something like the Effectiva is another company that specializes in what's known as social emotional learning technologies. So these are the types that can data mine. They're basically biofeedback wearables. They used to have a galvanic skin response device, but largely what they focus on is actually like facial recognition. So inferring emotions from facial recognition. But this company Effectiva is co-creates online courses with a company called Udacity. Udacity is funded by Mark Andreessen. And then another one, if we looked at OpenAI, they have a generative AI tutor bot, OpenAI being founded by Elon Musk. And the generative AI tutors can basically do everything that the adaptive learning courseware and the social emotional learning devices can do, as far as data mining the cognitive behavioral thinking algorithms and also the social emotional algorithms. And then even like a company called like Conmigo, which is this online learning platform. It actually has, Khan Academy. Conmigo is the AI bot that they have, and it actually uses an open AI engine. But Khan Academy itself has been funded by Elon Musk. So, right, these folks are invested on both ends of the spectrum of that feedback loop. But somebody like Sachs and Thiel, well, they've also had dipped their toes or been involved in sort of that old school Koch brothers think tank network as well. Peter Thiel and David Sachs, they were both editors at Stanford Review. Stanford Review being basically the premier sort of conservative magazine at Stanford University. Several other editors at Stanford Review have been PayPal Mafia folk like Ken Howery, who, by the way, is World Economic Forum guy, and then Joe Lonsdale, Stephen Cohen. But Thiel himself has written for the Cato Institute, and he wrote an article called The Education of a Libertarian, in which he says, quote, I no longer believe that freedom and democracy are compatible. And then he also says, quote, new technologies may create a new space for freedom. Part of what they were doing at the, that Cato Institute being one of those Koch brothers networks, but part of what they were doing at the Stanford Review was similar to like what they did with their Sachs and Thiel did when they co-authored the diversity myth. And it was like playing sort of the right wing end of the culture war stuff. Because it was formed as a bulwark against the sort of the diversity politics of Jesse Jackson's Rainbow Coalition. So you could just see it as sort of, this woke versus base thing, but right, using different colloquialisms, right, different rhetoric, but it's essentially the same left-right culture wars. And in the same way that they've used sort of this diversity, anti-woke thing, going back to the days at the Stanford Review, this is largely the engine that they've used to push people into the school choice thing. But just one other thing we could note, just to see how it all comes full circle, is Merit International is also funded by Stand Together Ventures Lab, which is the venture capital arm of the Stand Together nonprofit and the Stand Together Trust, which is founded by Charles Koch and is part of the State Policy Network, right? And so these folks have their hands in every part of this emerging ecosystem. We could talk about AI and crypto as well. Their investments in those industries. But I'll go ahead and pause for a second and let you jump in here.
Yeah, I had the question on AI, and I just wanted to ask you, because I've been saying for years, the algorithm ghetto phrase I'm trying to make popular from Edwin Black is that they're taking our analog world and trying to put everything on the digital farm that they own. They own that infrastructure, and then we won't have access. We won't be able to go back to the analog. It's only going to be the digital, which they control. And so you're kind of laying it out. They're building that same infrastructure in education, whether it's public schools, private schools, whatever. And I just wanted to ask you because, in recent months, again, it's not easy to monetize a podcast and live, making a podcast. I get tired of some of these people who complain and like, oh, you got an ad or something. Like, why don't you go spend your entire week working for free instead of, you're not going to do it. So the least you can do is, wait a few seconds, a minute. And so I was, contemplating looking at going back into teaching. And I got offered a job in China at some of the top international schools there. And my wife was like, yeah, let's go to China. I'm not averse to going to China, but I have access to some forums, which, some international teachers said pre-COVID, it was great. I've been in China before. I spent 3 weeks there. But they said they were literally welded shut into their homes during COVID. And they said I wouldn't go back to China, given what they've done already, and if that they could do it again. You were, some of these international teachers said that they were starving to death in their apartments. But I was offered a gig in Azerbaijan, and one option, to get back to my question, was there's a lot of these jobs now that I'm seeing in education for online teaching. They're accredited. Some of them are homeschool programs or others. They have AI tutoring. And I just see increasingly education, whichever way you cut it, public. Some of these schools offer their kids a choice. Like, you can go to these private school facilities that are all around the US and take your lessons there, which some will be online. You might have a physical tutor, or you can do everything online. So just your thoughts as to the trend in education. Is it where, like, EdTech and AI and all this stuff that you're talking about, that education is basically being fused with technology?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, and that's that's the premise of my book, which I started writing before Trump got in the first time and didn't get published till 2019. So if you want to start with the first thing that was written in the first chapter, which was an article that was published before Trump got in, and it's about 10 years, right? And basically what I looked at, the nice summary of the book is looking at, it starts with the school choice movement and looking at the emergence of the public-private partnerships and the corporatization of education, and then how that, right, morphs into, right, technocracy, and through basically an evolution of different devices. So starting with screen-based technologies to wearable technologies, eventually to implantable. But in the interim, the data that is being extracted from the screen-based technologies and the wearables, which I just gave you a handful of examples of those, that they're taking that data and they're building AI, generative AI with it, right? So I've been saying, this year whenever I go on a show, I said, we're getting close to the end of the book, because the last end of the book, the last chapters was the brain-computer interfaces, the transhumanism, and then also the AI. So we're basically to the point where we're looking at the large language models and the neural networks and, right, the generative AI, which can do all of those things, right? So we're basically past the point where you need to, you describe this distributed infrastructure. Right now, it'll be helpful to have the wearables on while you're interacting with the AI, so that it can also make it more inferences about your affective state beyond what's your facial, your facial signatures doing. But as far as like screen-based adaptive learning, that's just embedded into the AI now, right? Basically creating the feedback loops and the patterns and the profiles, right? So as an example of how we're there, I recently, ever since lockdowns, for the similar reasons that you don't want to go to China, it was the similar reason why I didn't want to go back to the school, because I didn't know what they're, oh no, you're in here, you got to get your therapy, your health treatment, and but so this semester, there's a company called Upswing. And it's got an AI bot that basically took a bunch of my hours for tutoring at one of the schools where I teach. So they're basically like, I guess the thing that we have to offer that's unique now is to be a human being in human space. So I go in there, and it's been nice to be around people, to actually talk to human beings. Most of teaching online that I've done, they're all asynchronous. So I don't think I've seen a student's face. You just see a name, maybe if they upload a picture, but other than that, and you don't get a sense of the person. But Upswing, so it does a few different things. So it does, it's an AI bot. It can do it's got a little tutorial on the homepage of what the bot can do. And it starts off, the student is, it's a mock student talking to the bot. And it's first it helps it with daily organizing, like making an itinerary and stuff, which, a lot of students, that's organization and time management is, one of the main skills that, I think could help a lot of students. But then it moves on to tutoring. And then from tutoring, then it goes to mental health. It'll give you mental health services. And by the end of the promo, I don't remember if the student says "I love you," but I do remember. I think it did, but definitely it does a heart emoji. And so, but the other thing about it is that so they boast that like the bot is called Anna, and I think it's like a little spin on analytics, because one of the main things that they promote is like you get all these outcomes data. You can look at individually student outcomes. You could look at like demographically, like, you know, group analytics. So you could look at it by race, gender, class, right? Socioeconomic bracket, right? All the different ESG, DEI, different categories. But then you could also look at it by grade, right? So, you know, freshman, sophomore, junior, or you could look at it institution wide, right? And they told us in the email, they bragged that it'll not just give data for the student that'll help the student, you know, progress up its, its analytics or its predictive analytics, but the institution, right? We'll get these institution-wide analytics. Well, so I look up the company and I go like, who funds this thing? So it's a bunch of venture capital firms, and it's also social impact investment firms. Now, we probably talked about it on the last episode, because piece that I did, that first one, what I looked at was how a lot of the school choice scholarships are going to be distributed by what are known as scholarship granting organizations or scholarship funding organizations, SGOs or SFOs. So they're basically these middlemen organizations that basically sit on your scholarship and oversee the distribution of it. But a lot of them are impact investment companies. Okay. And so one of them that I mentioned in that piece was social finance. Social finances upswing. So to jog people's memories, or if you're not familiar, impact investments are basically they're schemes in which in education, they go by pay for success is one of the particular provisions that are allowed in the Every Student Succeeds Act. Basically, it works like this. Okay. Impact investment company, or nonprofit rather, they put money up front to help achieve certain outcomes. And it's not just in education. It could be in healthcare or workforce training, or maybe criminal recidivism, right? To help with recidivism, things like that. So in education, they'll put up money to potentially help a student or a set of students or an institution achieve certain learning outcomes. And based on the extent to which they achieve those outcomes, they'll make that money back from the government, or they can actually make a profit. So what I saw was, we got another email where it was, what's the name of the company? I think it's AT&T and a company called CompuDopt are partnering to make sure that the students all have devices at the school where we're going to use the bot, so that they can make sure that they use the bot, so they can make sure that they get the data. Because what I see is that this is part of this emerging fintech social credit economy is the impact investment scheme as well. So basically, and the only way you can get the types of real-time and scalable outcomes analytics is through AI. You're not going to do it with a spreadsheet and a paper and pencil, right? So basically it works like this. You need the AI to get the data. You need the data to get the impact investment grant. Then the impact investment firm needs that data to get the money back from the government, right? And the money that they're going to be using in this emerging fintech economy is going to be a programmable, trackable, traceable stable coin, which enables them to get the feedback loops, right? So to say that, hey, we gave you these school choice tokens, we tracked them into this Edtech company, and then we saw that you got these learning outcomes, so you get extra tokens this time. Or maybe, you didn't do so good, so you're not going to get as many tokens this time, right? And so the way that they'll buttress sort of like, so they'll make it so that, every company's not going to just basically gamble on or bet on, the students with the most promising analytics. This is where your ESG stuff comes in for students that like, well, if you invest in this kid's analytics, right, you're probably going to come out with a loss. Now you could write that off, but the other incentive is that, right, because you serviced a marginalized group, or individual, and based on whatever ESG metrics, race, class, gender, socioeconomic bracket, you can, right, that will up your ESG score. And then that enables you to, right, pull in more grants, right, and other subsidies, et cetera. And so that's, that's where so that's where I'm at least at one particular school, is that the AI bot is taking half my hours. And the way I see it is that, we'll be lucky if we're still there next year. Like, I feel like by the end of the year, they're going to have enough data to say that the bot is just as effective, if not more so, in terms of outcomes than the human tutors. And therefore, it's not just cheaper to get rid of the human tutors, but we actually make money because of on the impact investment end as a result of the data collection.
You laid it out very well, and I have a few real world examples. I mean, I keep going back to these sci-fi movies that they've, I think, revealed what they've been planning. I want to go back and rewatch A Childhood's End again, and it's like Borg. What you're doing, and I'm seeing it everywhere in supermarkets, at airports, in schools, where they're replacing humans. They're eradicating humans. You go to the supermarkets now, it's like one human cashier and 20 self checkouts. What was I just reading? Now in the EU, that's activating the exit entry system, which I've been talking about for a long time. Unfortunately, Croatia is one of the first to go activate the digital gulag entry exit system. And now they have these kiosks. So you're going to need less humans operating the airports to check you in. It's going to be you check yourself in through the kiosk. And it's funny what you mentioned. One of the jobs I was looking at online was precisely, so it was the online homeschool accredited school, and they were looking for a full-time social studies tutor, because a lot of the students were they're taking online courses, no human interaction. And so they wanted to pay a human just so the kids could have a human experience. And as well as this Substack recently, I had my Substack problem, and they give you a AI bot, and almost every single time I know what the exact problem is, and I need a human, and the AI bot will always usually send you off to human. Anyways, and what was the other example? My ISP as well. They're increasingly, my internet went down again this week for 2 days. It happened 3 weeks ago for a week. And they keep trying to send you off to use the app. Don't call us. Don't talk to the humans. They're probably downsizing their employee numbers. Amazon, I think, they're going to get rid of their human resources, like 15% or something of human workers. And so you can see these big tech folks that you've outlined, PayPal Mafia and beyond, they're trying to eliminate humans. And as you say, like, in a year, are you going to have a job? It's their attack. It's like Satan is trying to get rid of humanity in every which way possible. And I want to ask you this question before moving on: kids and phones. So I saw this summer. It was shocking. We had friends in Croatia, and some of them are Christians. And it's like, you guys are supposed to do a better job at this. So my kid goes to one of our Croatian friends. So we saw them 3 years ago, and the kid goes 3 years ago. My kid goes, and to the other kids, we go to their house, and they go to the bedroom, and the other Croatian kid's room is filled with toys, like a little kid should, right? The physical world. We come back this year, that my wife tells me the bedroom's empty, no toys, and it's just a phone. And the kid is just on the phone. And my kid comes. It's like, hey, my kid lives in the real world still. Doesn't have a phone. Is inventing, using ordinary objects to play and invent. As we used to be. And so she goes to the old friend, and that other girl was with another girl, and they're both on the phone. And my kid's starting to act like, I want to fit in. They're doing this phone thing, this Borg phone thing, Neuralink Borg phone thing. Mom, give me your phone so I can sit next to them with my phone, so we can kind of be, and I'm like, what? And I've seen this with other neighbors and kids in Croatia. It's like, really, because they made both parents work, and they're stressed and tired and barely making ends meet, and so like, I don't know what, I can take this phone, leave me alone. And just any thoughts? Are you seeing this as well in U.S., Chicago, more and more, where the kids are sort of becoming one with, they're merging effectively already with the brain-computer interface?
I'll say that I notice a few. I'm surprised when I see there's like a few kids that live around the neighborhood. They play soccer and stuff, and I like, well, that's good. I like at least when I'm old enough, there'll be some normal, you know what I mean? People that grew up interacting with humans, like you know what I mean. When I'm the old guy on the block or whatever, like. But it actually is always kind of surprising because a lot of what you see is people walking down the street like that. I mean, but we've been on this track for quite some time now. For a long time, when people have asked me about solutions, I'd always say, well, one of the first things you probably want to do is like limit your screen time and your children's screen time in general, because like if you just hand the kid the phone as a babysitter, and then because you want to also check out, I mean, first of all, you're modeling that's right, that's what the adults check out on the phone. So, what's wrong with it? Right. And then in the meantime, the kid's still developing. So, you can, if you're going to do all that, if you're going to continue to do that, my 5-point solution program in there isn't really right. Even if you were to, behave differently within the realm of education like that, if you're like, as you noted, right, there's all these different converging pieces of this technocracy that come together. And this is where it started. And it didn't even start with the phones. Actually, where it really started was the sales cards that you used to get when they first started, where you could go into, Jewel or whatever, the grocery store. I mean, hey, take this thing and scan it, and then you get, a penny off your purchase, and the amount of money they're getting from the data is, obviously way, way more than that. But this is the beginning. So like that was the first step towards people not really thinking about the value of their data, the implications of it. Then it was just embedded in everything on our phones. Then, right, you live on your phone not just to be entertained, but to socialize, right? And so all of that. And by the way, the algorithms for the edtech companies, right? The adaptive learning course prep algorithms, if you look at companies like Dreambox, they tell you not only that the algorithms are essentially B.F. Skinner's operant conditioning algorithms, that they're effectively the same as the behavioral advertisement algorithms that Netflix and Amazon uses, right? So it's essentially the same system. And to another point that I think you're kind of touching on is that, in the book, I look at, eventually the introduction of brain-computer interfaces, implantables. Now, Elon Musk's been working on Neuralink for a while. This is not science fiction at this point. Obviously, these things aren't commercially, ready yet, on the store shelf. But that's sort of like the transhumanism chapter, right? The one that like focuses on transhumanism proper, the one where if you looked in the index, most of the right references that transhumanism would therein be, it's largely looking at neural interfaces. But you don't have to actually interface biophysically with technology to become transhuman. All you have to do is mediate, right, your human to human interactions through a screen, and outsource your own metacognition to a generative AI, right? So, like one of the things that certainly in education, and I want to revisit some of the stuff like the cognitive process pedagogy, Linda Flowers, and Chris Hayes, that writing is largely a metacognitive process. It's an introspective process by which there's idea generation, right? And then there's the monitoring of the translation of the ideas into text or speech, and then monitoring, right, whether or not, right, the words that come out, right, actually map onto reality, and whether or not it's consistent, coherent, and non-contradictory, right? But that requires you to recursively sort of look within and ask questions about, right, the thoughts you had and right your expression of them. Well, if you're using generative AI to right, even if you're just using it to like as like Grammarly for like sentence precision, that's gonna hamstring atrophy some of your brain muscles, so to speak. But if you're like asking it to like give you a thesis and tell you if your body paragraphs support your thesis and whether or not you have coherent reasoning, and it's supported with, like, if you're doing all those stages in the writing process, which, you know, is essentially, as Orwell says, right, thought is language, right? So, you know, speaking, writing, thinking, you know, if you can't do one, you're probably not that good at the other, right? And so, you know, the more complex cognitive tasks that you know, whether it's for expedience or whatever, that you outsource to AI, like, you're essentially interfacing or merging with it, right? It's because it's taking up that space in your head, right? That part of that brain, it's taking up that, even though it's not necessarily in there, it's taking up that space, right? And you know, the more that people lean into this, I think the easier it becomes to lean into it, because it's just like any muscle, right? Like the softer it gets, the harder it gets to do the opposite, to do anything, right? So it's sort of like, the more sedentary you are, right, the harder it is to do any sort of activity, you know. And so, yeah, I mean, that's to me, that's one of the more one of the scarier things, because, you know, especially even in this realm, I see a lot of people in the alternative media. I can tell they use AI for a lot of stuff, like including like writing very long articles, and I can tell that it is because, well, I grade papers for a living, right? And I mean, like, it's hard to articulate. It's kind of like, it's almost like you can smell it. It's like, I can't, it's hard to articulate, but there's a few giveaways. And the reason why it's hard to articulate is because it may or may not be the case, but like, so bullet pointed headings, like if AI bullet points everything, and it gives subheadings, even if all it's got under it is a paragraph. You don't put a subheading over a paragraph. You put a subheading over a series of paragraphs. A paragraph by itself has this thing called the topic sentence that tells you what the rest of it's about. So like, I see it now in, like, on papers, not, well, again, I see the students write it. And I actually had one confess to me, because I was tutoring, and I wasn't gonna imply, because I can't prove it. So but I did say, I was like, you got subheadings here, huh? And like, students never do subheadings for a 2-page paper, right? I was like, that's kind of interesting. One person, and the student goes, well, yeah, I used AI. I was like, oh, I didn't say it, but I'm like, so I do know. So I am inferring correctly. But, you know, when you see people that warn about Neuralink and things and alt media and social credit using AI, you know, like, dude, that's, you know what I mean? Like, that's you're leaning into this, you know, you are contributing to the thing that you're saying you want to stop. So, you know,
I think you created a job for yourself. People, you can hire you as AI lie detector. And just this week, a friend of mine, we're talking about stuff, and he pulls out, it's alien to me. Like, I cannot go there. I've tried virtual reality once. Like, I can buy one of those devices. I don't want to have nothing to do with it. I want to live in the real world. I believe as God made us to live. And we're talking with my friend, and he whips out his phone, and he's like, we're talking, I had a question about something, and he's like, he asks ChatGPT, Siri, and all of the privacy implications, right? The analytics data. Like, I don't have any of that stuff, so I don't even have my phone with me often. Or if I do, it's de-Googled or whatever. It doesn't have the 4G internet on. It's just got the old-fashioned phone on, like in case for emergency. And so I just find it completely alien. And I still, if I'm looking for something, I physically have to type it in on my computer or phone into the Brave search or start page or something. So I just can't, I can't get used to that. Chat GPT, tell me this, or Siri or whatever. And you mentioned AI. I was thinking it's really getting bad. They're inserting AI into everything. You mentioned into education. It's going to be crawling everything in Windows now, in Microsoft Office. I use LibreOffice, but it's getting this next week. I'm going to order yet another hard drive and install Linux. So I'm going to have Windows and Linux. And I'm increasingly using more disposable emails. By the way, anyone listening, one of my new affiliates is StartMail. I'm using StartMail for 10 years. And if you go to the website, you sign up. I think they give you 50% off for the year. I get a commission. So, but they have disposable emails, using extra SIMs and phones just to sort of keep my data away from this system that you've described. I do want to get to alternative media, but just any thoughts on? I wanted to share my screen again real quick. Where are we? Here it is. By the way, Tim Hinchliffe, we all know he's been covering the latest World Economic Forum meetings, and you were talking about this lady Nita Farahani. I've seen her before. She said most people will not in our lifetime have an implanted device. Most people will not need an implanted device, but as you described it, we may not need it. But in one of the recent clips that just dropped, she says Meta could reverse its policy on keeping brain data on the wristband device tomorrow. But when she said that, I thought, you won't need it, but you're going to want it because so many people are going to be having it. And yeah, just any further thoughts beyond education? You have this great graphic in your article, which shows in the center like a sort of wallet or digital ID. And then everything else is connected to it. Insurance premiums, access to hotels, travel abroad, school admissions, access to planes and trains, eligibility for government jobs, access to your internet, social services, loan rates and amounts. And again, I love some of your writing. It's scary. It says the digital wallet industry around school choice corporatization is not only integral to blockchain stakeholder capitalism and the crypto fintech economy of the fourth industrial revolution, but it's also integral to cybernetics surveillance capitalism and the AI social credit technocracy of the fourth industrial revolution by synergizing fintech with edtech through AI, digital wallet ledgers, and learning algorithms and so on and so forth. And so any thoughts on that? We're hearing about digital ID in UK, in the US, here in Mexico, CURP Biometrico, Russia, Max app, you name it. I feel like we're completely screwed. John, how are you seeing the rollout of this global algocracy?
Well, to your point, so you Start Mail, that was that Catherine Albrecht? I remember.
So Catherine Albrecht, I had, she used to be a spokesperson. She's Christian, and I had her on the podcast like over a decade ago. Then she had some sort of cancer, and she just kind of disappeared, and she stepped down from Start Page as a spokesperson because look, I don't make no bones about it. They made some strange deal with some ad person. I hope they don't do anything with ads. They say they don't, but again, like I say, nothing is perfect. And I did if you've been using an email for 10 years, I'm not going to change it. But anyways, yeah.
Well, because I actually, was it Spy Chips? Did she do the book?
Yeah, she's got the book Spy Chips. Yeah,
I got a signed copy that Charlotte that was given to Charlotte from her. Wow. I got that. But anyways, but the reason why I mentioned that is because you're noting like, right, I think you de-Google your phone and stuff too, right? Like, so you're right, you're making efforts to basically not do their work for them. So you're making efforts to silo the data, right? Because they're going to get some of it, right? But and some people will be like, well, they're got to get it anyways. Why take the time to do all that? Because this is where the digital ID thing, this is why they want it on the blockchain ledger. This is the insidious or the pernicious nature of the digital ID. This is why they want it. Like you said, they have essentially, right, they got your Edtech data, they got your workforce data, they got your health data, they got all this, right? But they're largely siloed, right? Or maybe, somewhere they can be brokered and purchased, by advertising companies, but some of it maybe they can't purchase because it's not like FERPA, Edtech stuff technically is not supposed to be, education data is not supposed to be harvested for behavioral advertising. So like if you want to put YouTube stuff, like if you're a teacher and you wanted to have a channel for your class, you'd have to put it in as a private page under your school ID, and the students would only be allowed to get in it if they log in with their school ID. Okay. And that way, because then what happens is that video will not have the same behavioral ad analytics embedded in it. Okay. But so the point that I'm making here is that the reason why they want and need the digital ID is it brings all of it together into a single profile that, right, and can be readily aggregated to get basically the full scope of all the different analytics. So basically all those different siloed databases, right, are just going to become one ledger on the DLT, one ledger on the blockchain digital ID. And, I've been saying this for a long time. That is the end game, because it's sort of the linchpin for the social credit. It's what enables them to get the most precise predictive analytics to bar you or permit you to whatever public services or commercial services. But so the big fear during the lockdown days was that the first foot in the door for that was going to be the health passport, right? And it still will be part of that ledger. I know that they've backed off, at least in the US, where I can go into school, I don't need it finally. But now with the whole with this ICE raids and all this, right? They've been touting the idea that, right, we need some form of national ID, right? Digital. And that's largely the sort of the impetus for how they're pushing it in the UK, if I understand correctly, right? It's to sort of combat all the immigration or whatever. And so, I've said for a long time, it can come in from any angle, and then it can spread out from any angle. And if they get too much resistance here, they can just flank it over here. And so now we just, basically what we did was, right now I see this as largely like Bush era policies, sort of 2.0. Maybe we could say 4.0, because they always got those graphics where it's like Obama and Bush, and then it's like you can do that with like everybody till now. Maybe the culture war stuff was a little different, but if you're talking foreign policy and all that type of stuff, right? It's like, but police state stuff, national security stuff, like, we basically just I had said the other day on the Homeless Left, I said they replaced Muslims with immigrants. He says, no, John, they added immigrants to Muslims. Oh yeah, you're correct. I got that wrong. So we just, we went from national security state to biosecurity state, and now we're going to do national security state. And, my fear is that when they switch back to biosecurity state again, they'll still have troops on the street. So imagine lockdowns with troops on the street. Right. And so now you can actually enforce it, right? Like the amount of civil disobedience people will be comfortable with trying to, muster is going to be, it's going to be a problem. But one of your other, to your point about the WEF thing, and they said, well, you won't need the wearable, or you won't need the implantable. So did you see the new Meta goggles that they have? They tried to showcase these new Meta goggles.
The Ray-Ban? Meta? No, or something else.
Are they teamed up with Ray-Ban? Maybe. So Zuckerberg tried to showcase them, and the clip that I saw, it wasn't working very well for him. But my barber, he said he'd watched the whole presentation. And I guess supposedly what this thing is, what they're trying to do with it is so it's got AR embedded in it. Okay. And it's got AI embedded in it. Like a large language model that you can prompt, not just by language speaking, but apparently, supposedly you can think it and it'll do it. So what that means is it has the EEG wearable, the EEG sensors built into it, right? Like just like one of those halos that we've talked about from Brain Code that they use for it's an Edtech product. And Betsy DeVos had ones that were similar from a company called Neurocore. Okay. And so I guess the way, if I had to infer, essentially probably the way it works is you probably calibrate it by speaking like, hey, Google or Siri, Meta, whatever their AI thing is called, call Bill, right? And it can track the electrical patterns in your brain when you verbalize. So if I speak it, I imagine if I think the words silently, it's gonna trigger a similar electrical signature, and so it's gonna know, right? So in other words, it can do the thing that the brain computer interface, it can, to use Yuval Noah Harari's phrase, what is it? Some surveillance beneath the skin. And people would always go, we're like, oh, he's talking about nanobots. And like, I mean, maybe, but as far as my research goes, like nanotech, we're not there yet as far as like microprocessors that small. But what I think he was right, what is clearly right here, right now, which I think is what he was really referring to more immediately, is that type of stuff. And surveillance beneath the skin means making inferences about your thoughts based on biosignatures. Again, heart rate, brainwave, galvanic skin, facial recognition, et cetera, et cetera. But that's kind of another part. And this is what I said. We're getting close to the end of the book, because what I had sort of surmised or projected was that yes, eventually you'll have everybody will have a personalized AI bot that follows them around in some kind of a device. I guess most likely it would be a goggle, because then you can have the AR overlays and interfaces. And remember, you said you were talking about they want to make everything have a digital overlay of everything. So imagine that instead of first it'll be your phone, beep, and you get in there. But eventually I think what it'll be is you have to have the goggles on, because the thing that you have to beep is a virtual overlay. It's not a physical device. So it has to, right? In other words, you have to have this wearable on and the AI is in there. Right. And, maybe the AI is like, Bill, your social credit score is not high enough. We're not going to populate the menu for you to get inside this store today. Right. But they'll promote it like, oh, but you can wear these goggles, and if you go to a party and you don't know people and you're socially awkward, you could scan their faces and read their Facebook profiles, and you'll know if you have something in common. And so, right, that's going to be this sort of digital overlay that you have to interface with to interact with, right, institutions and human beings. And it reminds me so I think that something like Peter Thiel's ontology, which is one of the AI engines that he runs through his Palantir company, it's his Foundry is another one. They integrate different data sets, right? We're talking about pulling together the different data sets to create these analytics. I think it's kind of like a dog whistle, in the sense that what they mean by that is so for those. It's kind of a fancy philosophical term, ontology. Okay, so three schools of thought in philosophy: ontology, epistemology, axiology. Right. So ontology is the study of being, or what is. Right. And sometimes that dovetails with metaphysics. But nowadays, right, in the postmodern world, there's really not been any philosophers that have even attempted to tackle ontology since Heidegger, basically. Right. And so because right, for think critical theory, think queer theory, right, performance identity, right, that there is no authentic you, there is no essence to your identity, there is no soul, there is, right, everything is performative, right. And so basically you are the data, right? Your ontology is not something physical that is the physical you, and it's not something metaphysical that is spiritual that is you. It is the ad hoc or post hoc data or analytics that we extrapolate from you, right? So all the data that's on your ledger, that is you, right? And we don't care if you have some intellectual, cognitive, verbal protest about it, right? So that digital you, your ontology, is going to determine, right, whether or not you're allowed to interface with the other digital ontologies that have been scaled and overlaid on, right, everything from, right, the public square to your commercial services.
You're
going to need your AI wearable to get in. Sorry, go ahead.
Your digital twin. I mean, effectively, it's it's your ghost. They've inverted it, where it's your shadow is actually you, and the real you, we don't need you anymore, because we can manipulate your shadow, your digital twin. We can control you that way, because we own this, matrix world now, and your ghost, your digital twin, we put in that matrix world, and now you're ours. Now it's like the Lawnmower Man. I'm thinking of that Michael Crichton movie, where he's sort of the Lawnmower Man. He goes into the digital realm, and he's like the god in there. And what you were referencing earlier, it's like Brave New with the troops. From national security to biosecurity. That's crazy. It's like Brave New World plus 1984 dystopia on steroids. And just your comment, because I was on a stream over the weekend, and someone was talking about you've heard, I've mentioned it before, and I want to mention it as a warning. This nanobots everywhere, and usually the people have the same sort of attitude, like this is schizo, like nanobots are going to get us. It's like Mel Gibson in Conspiracy, the movie, Sabrina Wallace or something. You heard her name, like, and again, those sort of people. For me, all I get from them is this fear. It's like nanobots are in my skin. We got to warn everyone. It's like, guys, chill out, relax. And like you say, and others that I've talked to, I don't think we're there yet. And even the stuff that you outlined that we're dealing with at the moment is enough to worry about. But we shouldn't have this attitude of like schizo. It's like, no, keep calm and carry on. Any thought on those sort of folks and the things that they're freaking out about?
Yeah, I mean, if you really are scared that you got nanobots or smart dust in you, like, just think about this for a second. Like, you ever ate something that wasn't so good, like, maybe not healthy, like, maybe just fast food, like maybe if you've been eating clean for a while and then you had fast food or something, like, if you can feel that, right, something that's actually at least semi-edible, like actually has some nourishment and your body has actually, like, I'm pretty sure you're going to know, like, you're going to have some kind of physiological response. You're going to get sick. Something's going to happen. You know what I mean? And I don't just mean, I've heard like the Morgellons, like, oh, and these, they pull out whatever these things are, I mean, maybe I don't know where that is, but that's not a bot either. Right. Like that. And that's, what I mean? That's probably more like, some skin condition, or maybe you're working somewhere where you get a lot of particulate, I don't know. But again, like if you like, that's why when I think of like, I'm pretty sure I would know if I had electronics inside me. I'm pretty sure it'd be quite disruptive. So yeah, and the other part with that is like, listen, you should consider everything. Right. You should consider everything. But then like once you've considered everything, you got to kind of go like, let's look at it in terms of likelihood and probability. Right. Now, something like that, based on just the metric I just gave you. Right. Like, well, I feel pretty okay. Right. Like that's right. So the odds that that's the case are not very high. Now, just because the odds aren't very high doesn't mean that it's not the case. But if I'm going to spend my time and energy trying to actually come to conclusions that I can know with some sort of veritability, I'm going to go ahead and keep, like maybe, but, and I'm going to start with things that like I can document that are demonstrably the case. Right. And then like we can speculate on that a little bit, but like, let's stay here in the world of empirics so that when we try to convince other people that like all the things we're talking about, AI, social credit, technocracy is a real thing. It's not just kooky, crazy sci-fi stuff that like they don't just shut down and dismiss you as a lunatic, right? Because you can actually show them like, well, here's this, here's the company that makes it. Here's the, and so, strategically in terms of like, trying to, resist this emerging technocracy, like it's not super wise to like, right? But and the other thing is, you're probably okay like right now, so.
Excellent response, and I think it's enough. And again, the most important is the algocracy. And as you said, like I can put like, here's the DHS who told PayPal to ban me. Here's me being mentioned by Kim Iverson and Matt Taibbi, credible, right? Journalists, and social credit, stuff that's tangible. And it doesn't happen. It's very rare. I had bad tacos yesterday, carnitas, and as you were saying, I knew that they were bad. They I had a disruptive experience. But I wanted to, before asking you about the alt media, just real quick, one more example of what we were talking about earlier, the information siloed and how they're trying to get everything. My Mexican bank app is insane. Like every time I log in, it says, "Give us your voter ID." I'm like, "You're Mexican, it's the main ID." I'm like, I don't even have one. Like, why do you need them? I don't know. I don't have it. I can't give it to you because I don't have it. Then it says, "Give us your nomina." Like it's like for most people in Mexico are employees, so they have like the payroll things. Like, why connect your payroll to your bank account? and it's incessant. I'm like, I don't have one. I work for myself. Just leave me alone and just give us your work history. And it's incessant. It's like, leave me alone. And I wanted to ask you talk about this. You mentioned wearables, Maha, RFK Jr. I'm trying to coin my own phrase, legacy, alternative media, LAM. So, mainstream alternative media, Ike, New Narrative Network, Amazing Polly, she calls it, where effectively a lot of alternative media today, the independent podcasting space, well, I think I've mentioned this before. There's a spectrum where some people are agents of the New World Order, others are just narcissistic or want money or status or grifting. Others don't have as strong a discernment, but it's not looking good. I mean, I was listening to Alex Jones just yesterday. The guy, and then I subscribed to Infowars. I mean, his daily newsletter, honestly, is like Fox News. It's dealing with partisan politics. It's like, where's the Alex Jones is talking about the global oligarchy, the New World Order? Doesn't exist anymore. And so, just thoughts on the state of alternative media today.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of, nowadays it's kind of embarrassing when I say that, like, yeah, I used to listen to quite a bit of Infowars once upon a time. And a friend of mine started, he was like, he's got Alex Jones, and I was in college at the time, like, this guy's crazy. And then there was also Aaron Russo's documentary. We watched that. He showed me that and an Alex Jones something. So this was like my first step into, like, the world of alt media. And, a lot of it was very compelling. It was like, and I was like, oh, but I'm like, man, this guy's crazy. I was like, when I saw Endgame, and this is another embarrassing, that was one of his documentaries. This is also embarrassing. It has nothing to do with Alex, was that, I think I was a senior in college. And I still didn't know I'd never heard of eugenics before, It's funny because you go through college and it's like all this anti-racist and decolonial, and it's like, we don't talk about the eugenics thing. That's kind of like the apex of all that, isn't it? Like, I have theories about why that is, but I don't want to digress. But he, that movie, he looked at the eugenics movement, Rockefeller funding. That was and I was like, what? Like, if this is true, then they'll have academic sources on this. And I'd go down to the library, and they had old stuff like from the Human Betterment Foundation, American Eugenics Society. I was like, whoa, like, is this real? Like, and then you see you find the UNESCO. I used to have the physical one that I used to get. I mean, it was an original. I got a reprint. And you open up the UNESCO, its purpose and its philosophy, and he's talking about, this is after World War II. He's talking about eugenics, and you're like, what? Like, why do I not know this? Like, and that was, you interviewed Edwin Black. I went and got his War Against the Weak. I still have it, and then the IBM and the Holocaust, right? And so that was kind of like a good reference material, and I'd use that, and I'd go and find, look up the primary sources. Anyways, so I was like, oh, okay, so there's what he's saying. There's a lot of truth to a lot of stuff that he was saying, but then you'd like watch him and he'd do that super yo. And at first it was like, it's kind of entertaining because it's like, oh, he's getting all upset. Like, you never hear anybody on the news like get impassioned about stuff. And it was comical too. He'd get kind of, and so I would give him a pass because he'd be like, he'd say stuff. And you look at we've got the documents, and you'd look at it and you'd be like, well, it doesn't quite say that. Like, like I get, like, you're using a heuristic, kind of a euphemism to kind of like get to the point fast. And, maybe, the guy has mentioned endless amounts of times how my family's all CIA and all the crazy, military background. So, I wasn't totally aware of that at the time. So I'm thinking like, well, maybe he's just a gruff Texas dude. He doesn't have the best rhetoric, and so that was why I was like, I want to do this, but do it like an academic without all the bombastic nonsense. And like, back to your thing about what we can prove, like, pull up any one of my articles. There is not there might be a summary statement at the end of a paragraph that is only reiterating or sort of encapsulating the data I've already discussed. But I'd say probably 99% of every sentence has at least one citation, if not multiple, right? Most of them primary source. Like that's the type of stuff I wanted to do. And I remember, he said it was all the two big things he used to talk about were like the false left-right paradigm. It's a false left-right paradigm. And then it was always about the Federal Reserve. And then he used to say, the Muslims are being used. They're not our enemies. That's the CIA operation. Right before Trump, I'm listening to him. It's the left. Stop talking about the Federal Reserve almost entirely. And it's the Muslims. And it's like, dude, I've been listening to you for how long? Like, this is 180 degrees, man. Like, what are you talking about? Like, and it became clear very, very quickly that, you know what I mean? Like, I think he was, we're the tip of the spear. By the way, tip of the spear. That's like a Fort Bragg psychological operations term, right? Info wars, kind of like mind. There's a war on for your mind, like mind wars, like Michael Aquino. Like, when you start to look at that, I've discussed with people like, well, was he always kind of that way? And he was just biding his time to like, I feel like during the Obama years, it's a moot point either way. But if I had to guess, I'd say during the Obama years, his goal, his mission was to play this middle of the road populist guy to pull people that had dissented from Obama that were, I guess you could have said were left of center into this so-called libertarian-ish Trump movement. And he was just buying his time till he was going to do this flip. But I mean, at this point, it's like, you can't, and I tried to be, I don't like to do this, especially people in this space. It's not like everybody talks about this stuff. If you're like me, most of the people that you know in your regular life, you don't talk about this at all with, because it's just, even if they wouldn't think you were crazy, they wouldn't know what you're talking about. You wouldn't be able to hold a conversation. So I've always tried to be diplomatic and like, okay, let's give him a benefit of the doubt. But it's like, this man has leaned so hard into it, contradicted himself so many times. I don't see how you can say. And then the other thing was, he used to always say that, the Patriot Act, are going to bring it in and I'll use it against the Patriots. Are going to bring it. And now you're bringing martial law. And then now he's like, basically martial law and police state is good because we're going after the left. And if I was going to make that move, he'd be the man that would be, he'd be the perfect quarterback sneak, so to speak. The guy that was supposedly sounding the alarm, and this is why rhetoric is so important as a discipline, right? Because like, if part of rhetoric is like logos and logic and understanding contradictions, and right, understanding when you're being manipulated based on ethos and pathos, meaning like somebody's credibility or their emotion, or the fear or the rage that they're baiting you on. It just, I am surprised that there's so many people that still listen to him at all. I'm guessing a lot of them are people that just found out about him during lockdown years. So if you had a similar experience, oh, here come the dogs. When you first come into this realm, there's so few people that are having this conversation that it's like, it takes you time to really to see, right, some of the shady stuff in the background, right? Like, because it's kind of like, well, when you start to look at the whole conspiracy theory, alt media realm, what you're doing is you realize like, okay, basically most, if not all of, the vast majority of what I've been told about history and, society, the world that we live in, more or less lies and propaganda. Right. And now you're finding these sources that are giving you insight into like what's behind that. Right. And you're like, well, this is like kind of this person is kind of giving me the only other map this other stuff is propaganda. So it's hard to go like, well, this is also propaganda, because then it's like you have no orientation or compass. So like, I think a lot of people, you'll go through a phase where it's like, okay, you realize the mainstream media is this, it's like Plato's cave. You know what I mean? Like there are the shadows on the wall. And then you look behind you And it's like, oh, there's the puppeteers, but wait, there's actually an outside of the cave type thing. And you can't just, I don't know, maybe some people are faster than me, but I don't think you go from mainstream media as far. If you do go that fast, I think where you end up is nanobots in my skin, planes didn't hit 9/11, that type of stuff. Like, and I think that's part of the op. So I think the fact that he even has any following is, I think those people that are in the middle part of the cave right now, maybe. But people are so the whole culture war thing, this whole, woke versus based, whatever you want to call it, like has got people, I mean, basically psychotic. I mean, like they're so they are motivated by fear and rage and basically zero logos, zero thought. Like, certainly not, for as a Christian, like I don't see a lot of mercy. I don't see a lot of, loving my enemies. I don't see a lot of that. And then, it's surprising that people are still on the InfoWars bandwagon, given that like even the Rogan sphere, like is, what do you have? Basically what do you have? Peter Thiel and Mark Andreessen, Elon Musk, Palmer Luckey. Did he have Lonsdale on too? I can't,
I mean, sure. Trump and I was bringing up Jones because he's at the top of the opposition hierarchy, like it or not. And I think for many of us, he was like my crazy uncle. Like, I like that, like you explained, a lot of us modeled the podcast that we're doing or were inspired by the old, authentic, real, Alex Jones. And so he was dear to me earlier. And that's why it's kind of like frustrating. But then, yeah, and any further thought on the wider network? Because I think that's even more important and more insidious. You meant, Joe Rogan. You mentioned Jones, his family CIA. Andrew Tate is this big influencer whose dad is CIA. Candace Owens is now this big influencer who met some dude in Britain who's connected to the royals or something and married him after 2 weeks. And, she was just some gun for hire, I think, right? Back in the day, like trying to make her way in media, like a lot of like AOC was, right? She was just nobody, and like, hey, you look good, we're gonna take you and make you this Democratic operative, and it's like that stuff is just weird. And who is the other one I'm farting out on now? That had also CIA. It's Tucker Carlson, right? He's dead. So just this whole now, and then I found it strange right before Kirk's assassination. Again, that's another rabbit hole. He's still alive. He's in the Valhalla FBI protection program. But
hologram.
I mean, he might be. Maybe someday we'll figure that out. But that's like we can't. You already explained it. We can't.
That's one of those things that's like, let's start with some things that we could add, like the Mauser, like that does, how do you get the gun? Let's start there, right? And let's focus on that, right? Like, sorry, I didn't mean to jump.
No, I forgot my. Oh my goodness, I forgot where I was going with that. The wider sort of network, Kirk, I lost it. But just any thoughts on?
Sorry,
yeah. Just any thoughts?
Derail you like
no,
that.
it was my own doing. But any thoughts on this? It's more insidious now. This alternative media network and thoughts there and criticisms that you have.
Yeah, I actually missed something I was supposed to land on when I did my last little spiel there. Because you mentioned it's like Fox News. Well, I remember not too long before he did the hard shift where it's all the left and he started to be friend because he used to talk mad stuff about Fox News. And I had some of the documentaries. I gave a few of them away. I don't know if I still have the one, but remember the one where it was like a 9/11 anniversary and they were like bullhorning Geraldo Rivera, and Geraldo flips him off. He thinks he's not, and he gives him the middle finger. And dude, he had Geraldo on, and then he had Tucker on. He'd have Lou Dobbs, and I'm like, what's going on here? Like, it was like, okay, maybe, and you look at it, and you're like, maybe these people are waking up too, and but like what I feel like happened, like I think, so the right wing, the current right wing is kind of, it reminds me of what the broken coalition of the Clinton era. And so what they did was they brought together all these disparate identity politics groups on the left, right? So, basically all the woke categories, like race, class, genders, right? And you pick all the different ones. And right, they didn't necessarily have anything in common except that they were, right, marginalized by the far right, supposedly, right? And so they brought together all these different marginalized groups. The right has something similar, right? You have like your traditional kind of neocons. You have your libertarian types, right? You have your Christians, right? You're even, we could evangelical Catholic, right? All the different variations thereof, right? And then there's like a new one too, which I guess so maybe the hardcore libertarians, like the ones that are like so anti-state that they're basically like the fascist types. Like there's the new age thing but part of that, the sort of the media sphere, so the neocon stuff was like its own kind of like Fox News, et cetera, right? Then you had like Mises Caucus over here for like libertarian stuff. Then you had like the crazy conspiracy stuff, like Alex Jones, right? Like what I think, and I think this was strategic, was that so Jones, when he started to rub elbows with Tucker and these people, it created a gateway or a channel where you could pull all of them together and then use Trump as like the galvanizing force to revolve around. So what happened then? So first it was Alex starts to be friendly with Tucker, and that makes people in the conspiracy realm, they're more open to listen. So we can listen to Fox now. We can listen to Tucker, right? Because he's kind of like he's waking up. So, and that makes you open to a Republican candidate like Trump when he comes on stage. And now Tucker leaves Fox and makes his own thing. And now he's like, he's not totally Alex Jones, but he's doing many taboo topics. He just had, I don't know the guy's name, I can't remember, but he interviewed a guy that was talking about how Silicon Valley basically worship demons and they're all occultists.
Oh, that was a great interview. Yeah,
it was a good interview. But that's not something that they ever would say on Fox News, right? And that's not anything that Tucker Carlson, not even like peak, lockdown stage when he was, talking about social credit, this and that, right? So he leaves. And so now you have, so when it went from first you had Alex created a gateway from conspiracy to Republican mainstream Fox. And then when Tucker leaves, now he creates a gateway for those like, a lot of people that watch broadcast news are of an older generation, right? Yeah, probably baby boomer, if not, most like when I talk to people my age or younger, they're like, no, I haven't watched broadcast television and I stream everything, right? So that's like a gateway for the people that were in the mainstream to like start to, consume the conspiracy stuff as well. And I just think, and then, as you noted with Tucker, is here's the thing. So his dad, right, Dick Carlson. So when there's this, I think this is some kind of theater op here with Candace versus Nick Fuentes versus Tucker, right? Because they're all, noticing is the phrase they use now, right? But they're all pointing fingers at each other, right? And at one point, I think it was when Tucker and Candace, there was an interview, I don't know who was interviewing him, but they're talking. And Tucker says something about Fuentes. He goes, and he said that my dad was CIA. And I was like, well, that's just not true because, I didn't know it. And then somebody clipped him from like, I don't know, a year or two before. Because in this interview, he's saying he didn't know that at the time. I found out later that he was. Somebody clipped him saying that he knew it way before Nick Fuentes said that. So he's lying on camera right there. Like you did, like, and if you're lying that you knew it later than you actually did, I'm pretty sure you knew it the whole time. And I'm pretty sure that like, you're kind of carrying on in your father's footsteps. Right. And I want to say, and this, I want to speculate here. I'm going to speculate here because I don't like to speculate. I like to have documents that can prove what I'm saying, but sometimes maybe it's okay to try to get out in front of something. So when I watched, I think that there is so much attention on the noticing thing that this is going to be a judo move. Like it's from the left, it's from the right. It's one of the only times I've ever seen something that was basically taboo for political discourse to get so much attention. Two other times, Obama and Trump. And both of those didn't turn out, not right. Neither of those turned out where they were going to be the thing you thought it was, and it wasn't good for you, right? So, when I saw, here's perhaps a better example if we zoom in on Trump. And I didn't say anything about it because you don't have the empirics at the time. I just waited until he got in. But I'm watching during 2024, and I'm going like, every time they throw a lawsuit at him and it doesn't stick, he looks like a martyr and he looks like he's being persecuted and his numbers go up. And I think it was Frank Luntz, I think was the guy that he said it as much. He was like, he's some pundit. I can't remember. I think I got the name right. But he was like talking to these Democrats and he was like, you're basically, he's going to win if you keep doing this. And, I looked at it and thinking like, right. And if I know that, like if I was the Democratic Party, and I didn't want him to win, I would stop doing that. Like, so you look at it and you go like, dude, are they doing this on purpose? Right. And then the Butler event, right. That basically clinched it. Right. At that point, now he's like, now he's really a martyr. Right. Well, I was like, okay, if I say that at the time, it'll just sound speculative and people will be like, well, I said, I'll wait till he gets in and then I'll refer back to it because I'll be able to point to what he's doing now. Right. Like, and so, it like at the time, if you would have looked at it, it would have been like, we're gaining on the left and we're going to turn the tables, right? Like, it's like, no, you're not going to turn the tables. They're going to turn, but they're going to keep turning right all the way back on you. And I can't help but think that that's something similar is occurring with all the so-called noticing.
Yeah, and I had remembered my earlier point because I'm noticing these patterns of the alternative media networks. You mentioned, there's Joe Infowars, Tucker Carlson Network, Joe Rogan, and then Owen Schroyer a few days before the Kirk event, he quits Infowars and says, I'm launching my own network. It's kind of like this is the same pattern where they'll separate. Like, if you're in Star Wars battle formation and then one of the ships goes off, the units break off, and it kind of feels like that where, there was Stu Peters and then, and I don't know where all of these people are at. And, Stu Peters is hung up on the Zionist stuff and there's that, Nick Fuentes thing. And then there's this group and that group. And it's just weird. I'm noticing this pattern where they're just spinning stuff off. And just any thoughts as to, any final conclusion there, speculation, why? Like a Tucker Carlson who he'll have guests on that I think, again, it's the whole point of limited hangout where you have to give some things that are true, but then half is not, or it's a distraction taking you down a rabbit hole. Why do you think they're doing this? What's their end goal here? I think it's just to take true dissidents and steer us back into supporting the New World Order. Like Trump is New World Order president. He's installing technocracy.
Yeah. So I would guess it could be one of two things, and it could be so. One is you look at it and you're a party. You might go like, okay, so maybe it's just the case that like now that what's going on in Gaza is reached, peak temperatures, that maybe it's just the case that like it can't be ignored anymore. Maybe that's why there's all the attention on it. But that doesn't explain why people on the left, so-called, have been platforming Nick Fuentes. Right. So the pro-Palestine people on the left would always be like, we're not anti-Semites, we're not Nazi fascist type, we're not white identity politics, we're not that type of stuff. Right. Which, look, is Nick Fuentes a troll? Is he a Discordian? Is he a jester? Is it all just is it just edgelord stuff? But and he doesn't really mean it. It doesn't matter, right? Like if you don't believe in that type of identity politics, you know what I mean? Like you don't platform it, whether it's a joke or it's serious, right? I personally think, I mean, there is a performativity to sort of the accelerationist far right that is sort of an antipode to the woke left, in the sense that like the edgelord stuff just like the woke left is about sort of blending together all the identity categories and all the boundaries of identity, like for this under the guise of inclusion. Like what you have on the accelerationist kind of Discordian far right is this edgelord thing where you say racist stuff just to transgress the boundaries, just to smash everything together for no purpose, for nihilism. This is where like you see a lot of like the glitch art stuff is real popular in a lot of those, like if you see some of those accounts, like, because what is glitch art, right? It's just like an image without a meaning, right? Devoid for like art, usually like it might be an image unless it's like, Jackson Pollock, super postmodern stuff. But this is basically what it is. This is why I say it's an antipode to because it's very postmodern in that sense. So like, I think that a lot of the Nick Fuentes stuff is like, and those types is performative edgelord for the sake of, and that's why they basically LARP perform Christian identity, because it's like an alchemical working, right? So it's like, what is the antithesis to all the woke identity? Well, it's largely, it's going to be Christian morality, at least in the religious end, right? And so in order to close the circuit, you have to put the energy into the thing that is at least rhetorically its antithesis. Whether you believe in it or not, you perform as it, and it creates, right, this tension that you need. I think I went too far trying to explicate. That's it, right? So when you see people on the left platform that stuff, right, whether he's an honest, whether he means the things he says, or it's right, this performative thing that doesn't you wouldn't want to all of a sudden ally with these people if right, you're on opposite ends, even though you have a common I guess opponent, we'll just use in the political sphere, right, in the state of Israel. Like you wouldn't necessarily, team up. The communists wouldn't necessarily team up with the fascists. Let's just put it that way. Right. So one of two things can be happening. It could be that they're trying to drum up legitimate anti-Semitism. Like they're trying to either turn people like anti-Semitic, or get people that are anti-Semitic to like actually out themselves. Right. In order to then you'll be able to label everybody that doesn't like this war an anti-Semite, and therefore a terrorist, and therefore, right, and then we can sort of remove you from the conversation.
Yeah, like before you were like 20 years ago you were a Muslim, a terrorist, or in any way associated with them, and then 10 years, 5 years ago you're a Russian agent, and now you're a Nazi.
Yeah. Right. But it's possible. It is also possible. I think it's probably more the first one, but it's also possible. I think you had was it the guy Donnie Darkened on
my TNT show? I need to get him back. Yeah, that's fascinating. And I just, before you get into Donnie Darken, I think I've we're sort of gone into overdrive now, a little esoteric beyond the Overton window, but this is good, and I think we need a bit of this speculation, and it's kind of unclear. I feel like we're the blind men filling up the elephant, and there's something to what you're saying, and I've talked in the past, and it's very occult, left, right, whatever's going on. You mentioned Michael, was it Aquinas? Was it? No, what's his name? Aquino. Yeah. He was a Satanist, in the military industrial complex. General Flynn, like James Lindsay posted the other day. No one is still relevant, and no one has explained why Michael Flynn was making theosophic prayers some years ago. Yeah. And then you met all these people that we're talking about. There's either around them is this aura ambient of New Ageism, Gnosticism, Theosophy, which is for me Luciferianism, the Lucis Trust type stuff. And so, and you mentioned the word alchemical, like something is going on here that is strange. I can't exactly pin my finger on it, but we're something's going on here. But anyways, Donnie Darkin.
Well, yeah, I mean, if I remember correctly, right, his whole thing was he was considering whether Trump might be the Antichrist. Am I correct on that? Am I remembering correctly?
I think earlier he was positing that. I don't think,
I don't follow him that much.
But just on that point, it's really weird. Again, you can't deny what's going on with Trump now is wild, because even this week I compiled in my weekly analysis like so many clips of with the whole Zion. Mike Huckabee's playing Sweet Home Jerusalem. Trump is lauding his daughter for converting to Judaism. They're calling him in the Knesset. He's saying, "Pardon, Bibi." They're calling him Cyrus, the greatest ever. He apparently just yesterday I saw he's building like an ark on the White House lawn to himself, like a Napoleonic complex. It's just, what is going on? Like, this is like Nero. Like, this is weird. And Thiel reports that the fact that like they're talking about Antichrist so openly. Economist cover just mentioned that this week, and Thiel is like, I don't think Xi Jinping and Biden or Bill Gates are good candidates for Antichrist. Trump, maybe, but probably not. If you question AI, you're Antichrist. Like, that's what Peter Thiel was so supposedly saying. So I'm like, what timeline are we on? So anyways, but yeah, Donnie Darkin, Trump, Antichrist, what were you going to say?
Yeah. Well, and so, my dear friend, another one of my mentors, Constance Cumby, author of The Hidden Dangers of the Rainbow. She passed away this year. I had the honor of being.
Oh, really? I thought.
Yeah,
what?
she passed. Yeah, here's, I got the memorial thing right here. So
When did you pass? I'm sorry, I can't see it.
what does it say? What does it say? I think it's June something. I can't remember.
June 17.
That's Timothy. I like that verse for her because she really did live that. I have fought the good fight. I have finished the race. I have kept the faith. Now there is in store for me the crown of righteousness, which the Lord, the righteous judge, will award to me on that day, and not only to me, but also to all who have longed for his appearing. That was on, June 9th was she passed away on June 9th. And I actually was there maybe a week or so before. And she was having health problems. I used to go around and hang out and help out and stuff. And I knew that what the problems that she had the year before, like I could tell, I was like, I think your symptoms are going back where they were, and but she was, her blog, some of the last things she wrote about was what you're talking about, all these, the theosophical connections in the Trump movement and the sort of the Q operation and Michael Flynn. And I took her, what was funny is I took her to, when me and Courtney interviewed her, this was the first time I met her in person. It took me like a year to actually set it up because she was having health problems and stuff. There just happened to be one of the Reawaken tours up there where Flynn was at and all that. And I was like, hey, I'm going to come interview you. I was like, would you want to? I was like, you got that Reawaken thing. And it was only like 20 minutes from her house. I was like, would you want to go and check it out? She's like, I was like, I get you, ticket or whatever. He's like, yeah. So I brought her up there and she's going to the booths and like grilling people, like, and then people are like, and I'm just like smiling, like, but she would speculate. And this is part of why she speculated that he was the Antichrist was because you might not know her. So she had a second book. It's called A Planned Deception. So a lot of the research that she did was like a lot of the New Agers in the 80s were pushing for the reappearance of the Christ. So she tells a story about this guy, Benjamin Krem, and he did a channeling where he was supposed to channel him. And she came there and basically crashed the party. And so part of her, she was always looking for them to prop somebody up as the Antichrist, right? So, this is something that she just was always looking for. And so she was looking possibly that, that Trump might be, and she's not the only one. But I say all that to say that, and we could go if you want, we can talk about like which boxes has he potentially checked as far as things that you would see. And there's a few of them. But one of the things that happens, in the end times, according to Revelation, is that the Antichrist will turn on the Jews, right? After he rebuilds the temple and declares himself as God in the temple, then he turns on them. So possibly, right? And the Theosophists, even though they're really into Kabbalah, like if you read Bailey and a lot of these, like they don't have a lot of nice things to say about Jewish people. So it's not impossible that happens. Like, you know, I mean, I know those are two totally opposite. It's hard for me to tell yet, like, but it's possible. That's my theories, right? You know, I know that's like it's not like two things that are similar, but it's one or the other. I think I don't think it's just gonna coast through like that, you know. So
I can. Again, we're just this total speculation, but again, you can see in Trump that sort of God complex where he remade the White House into gold, just ego the size of a planet. Something weird is going on. Like I don't think we've been here before. This is uncharted territory.
Yeah.
And
one of the one of the things I speculate too is that, this is one that I've thought about quite a bit. I mean, since before I really started writing, or at least since I started to see, you know, like tensions building up, like in terms of war with Russia and the Middle East, etc., would be that perhaps we are supposed to play the belligerent, like so in this alchemical working, like we're like the Judeo-Christian values of the West are supposed to play the belligerent role in World War III, so that when we're supposed to take a dive, so that way, right, like metaphorically, symbolically, right, it will be that, you know, the new secular humanist, transhumanist, technocratic new world order saved humanity from, right, and that would be very Gnostic, because, right, that would be like, because remember, the God of the Bible is, right, and to the Gnostics is the demiurge, and he's the bad guy, right, he's the villain, and Lucifer, the light bearer, right, the one that brings truth, right, you know, through and if there's anything that technology you could think of it as, like, not just a form of idolatry in terms of like something that a creation of human hands that you then basically make as they want to make it a god. There's people that have referred to it as a god,
like a golem. I've been thinking recently the idea of a golem, right? Like that they're fashioning this being out of material where it doesn't really have like a soul. It's just like a thing, and that's what. Yeah.
And that's the apex of knowledge, you know, in the modern era is science, and the apex of science is technology. You know what I mean? So like all of that, I mean, it would fit those tropes. And you know, and the other thing is when you look at it, it's like, and in the meantime, look at the stuff. I mean, we touched on what's going on domestically. It's like, it looks, if I didn't know any better, well, yeah, I would think that somebody wants there to be a civil war in this country at the same time that there's a world war. And the only reason you do that is because you don't want this place to be what it is anymore. Right. And that doesn't just mean in terms of the geographic boundaries and in the supply chains. That means like the values of the Constitution and, you know, the religious values that a lot of us hold, etc.
Well, the future, as I always like to say, the future looks brighter than 1,000 suns. I think on my trip back from Croatia this summer, I finally watched the Oppenheimer movie. It was well made and entertaining, but anyways, yeah, I think you're on point. Mike Shelby, I had him on months ago, and the title I put of the podcast was Civil War 2.0, World War 3.0. And it's funny, Trump just came out this week saying there will be no third world war, at least not out of the Middle East. And often, you know, when politicians say something, the exact opposite is going to happen. So yeah, we've gone into overdrive, not usual for podcast guests on Geopolitics and Empire. I think if we had like 2 hours, leave your comments wherever you're listening if you like this or not. But we've run the gamut. Any other or final thought for us, John?
I mean, just one little note, since we touched on the whole alt media sphere, is like, you know, Rogan and Jones go way back. And recently there's been like footage of them hanging out around the time when they discovered footage of them when they did their little theatrics in front of Texas, I think it was the governor's mansion. It was when they dressed up like the Bushes or Bush and Reagan or whatever. Like, so it's just another example of like, yeah, I think these people have been groomed for this time for a long time. And we didn't talk about the Theoverse behind both of those characters sort of being like the apex of, this alt media thing. But yeah, no, it's been a good chat. And I didn't realize it was a whole 2 hours, man. Sorry about that.
No, it's great. And just on that last point, would you say, I think even some of these people that fall into this net maybe initially do so unwittingly, no? And then once they sort of unwittingly stumble, and then they're given these opportunities, doors open, financial status, like boosts, and then they're in. And then once they're down the road a bit, they kind of like, oh, I can't go back. No, kind of, I don't know. I'm just trying to.
No, I mean, I think like, you always say, oh, never attribute to malice, what you can attribute to incompetence. And another way, I think there's like a corollary to that in media. And it's like never contribute to, never call someone an operative when you can say that they're an opportunist. Right. And I think look, I mean, there was a short period where I was like, because I teach, that's how I make money. And I'm like, man, like I can't keep up with everybody writing and stuff. Like I need to find a way to make a business out of this. And, I never got anywhere close to that. I had a few people that were subscribed to my database. I mean, if you know anything about selling books, the publisher gets the bulk of the money. I mean, and so unless you got like a big contract and you get an advance, it's extra a little bit of money here and there. But, when you're talking like when I go travel to do speeches and stuff, they don't always pay me. They don't always cover my travel expenses. Like, so ultimately I have spent a lot more money than I've made at this, but I stopped trying to make the money, not because I got to a point like what we're speculating some people where they might get in that process. But it was just like, I already felt it like whenever I would do something, part of it wasn't just like, is this article say what I want it to say? And is it polished and like, okay. And then like, did the information, it was like, okay, like, I was like, oh, I only got this many. I didn't get a subscriber this time. Oh, and it was like, I just didn't like, I didn't like that it was adulterating, you know what I mean? What I had been doing, like it wasn't as enjoyable. Like I felt pressure to like, and so I just was like, it's going to be my thing that I do. It's going to be my hobby that I do it's going to be the fun thing that I do. I don't, work is play for me, but I could see like, if that's how I felt and I didn't have that much skin in the game, my income, I wasn't paying my bills on it. Like I could see how that narrative, right? It grows into other things. And then like, and the other part is too, you might have a similar experience when you meet people in the sphere and you get to know, and even if you just hang out with them a little bit, you're like, I like this person. This is a cool person. Right. Like, and then it becomes when you see things later that like, what's going on? What are they saying? What are they doing? Like, you don't want to, you want to you want to give them a benefit of the doubt that you otherwise wouldn't if they were just a face on a screen. Because like you have nothing, right? But it's like, man, I like this guy. I don't want to think that about that. You know what I mean? Like, so all of that, I think all these things like can make somebody that starts like with genuine, intentions and, sort of step by step, the next thing you know, right? Like you're not, I can't say that. I shouldn't say that. And then maybe eventually it's like, well, I have to say this in order to, and so I think that's probably the bulk of what drives most of the, we'll just call it propaganda in the alternative media. The amount of actual ops are probably very limited. I think I'm confident to say that Jones is one of them. And Tucker is probably one of them as well.
No, you fleshed out my same sentiments, and I've been tempted myself, and just as you said, people that I've met that are friendly, and then I see them in other associations, and it's kind of like, well, I should say something. I should call that out. But then sometimes you kind of censor yourself, and just to your last point, it's like I have that same, where you weren't making money. I'm lucky I'm able to do this for now. Again, I don't care about the money at this point. I mean, I need it to live, to keep doing this, but I just have a whole cold hearted calculation, call it the bit of stoicism or realism or the Croatian in me. It's like, look, I need your support on Substack, the ads on the podcasts. Subscribe, don't subscribe. But it's like, if it gets to a point where it becomes untenable, then I have to drop the podcast and go to work. So it's just kind of like, that's how it is. And I think that's how it should be. I don't think we should be kind of like, as you mentioned earlier, focusing on how many people have seen it. I'm just churning out the podcasts, take it or leave it, subscribe or don't subscribe. That's my point, like trying to do the best podcasts and other stuff as I can. And I don't even think about money or how many subscribers I'm getting. And I'm just keeping on trucking, going down through the tunnel. But anyways, where are the best places? Your links are always in the description, but if they haven't got a copy of your book, definitely they should get one. I've got the digital version, I believe, on Kindle. Where are the best places people can find you, support you, projects?
Worldorder.info is the website, has links to all of the social media. I am Taoist Professor on X, TAOIST Professor. If you do want to support a little bit of what I do, other than buying a book that you can get at trineday.com, Trine Day Books. There's a link to it on the website as well. You could subscribe to my database that basically is a mind map of Charlotte's research and my research combined, and I've got a bunch of her. Charlotte Iserbyt. Oh, we didn't mention her this time. Charlotte Iserbyt wrote the foreword to the book, Deliberate Dumbing Down of America. But if you don't know about her, check her out. And anyways, I have her files uploaded pretty regularly there. And so, yeah, schoolworldorder.info is the main place to go. And you can branch out to all my stuff from there.
Well, I hope to see you again in the flesh one of these days, hopefully soon, back home in Illinois. So thank you, John.
Thank you, sir.